Hey guys, tonight we're going to untangle a tale as old as time, yet as misunderstood as my teenage nephew's TikTok dances. You know, the one about the lady with the serpentine hairdo. Yeah, Medusa. You probably picture her, right? All angry, eyes, fangs, and a head full of slithering, hissing snakes. You can almost feel the chill as you imagine that stone-cold gaze locking onto yours, turning you into a very artistic, albeit permanent, garden ornament. A little hint, you probably won't survive this story in one piece, at least not metaphorically speaking. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You might be surprised to learn that our stony-gazed anti-heroine didn't start life as a monster at all. In fact, we're wandering through ancient Athens back in the day. Say, around 700 BCE, you'd probably hear whispers not of a terrifying gorgon, but of a woman of breathtaking beauty. Medusa, in her earliest incarnations, was a maiden, her loveliness so profound it was almost divine. She possessed a kind of ethereal grace that turned heads, not into granite, but with admiration. Imagine the kind of beauty that makes even the gods pause, the sort that poets would dedicate entire scrolls to, describing every curve of her lips, every gentle sweep of her eyelashes. This wasn't some fleeting TikTok filter beauty. This was the kind that resonated through the marble halls and dusty marketplaces of the ancient world. The popular image of Medusa with snakes for hair and a face that could stop a charging rhinoceros in its tracks is actually a later development in her myth. For a long, long time, she was simply beautifully human. This mainstream historical fact often gets glossed over, doesn't it? We tend to remember the monster, the villain, the terrifying figure, rather than the innocent who became that horror. It's like remembering the grumpy old man down the street, but forgetting he used to be a charming, vibrant youth. The transformation, as you'll soon see, is crucial to understanding her story. And indeed, the unexpected reason her hair became a nest of vipers. Now, always petrifying, it was only after her transformation as a protective mechanism or a cruel curse that her eyes gained their infamous power. Before that, her eyes would have been seen as pools of liquid gold or deep sparkling obsidian, drawing you in rather than turning you to stone. It's a subtle but important distinction, isn't it? It means that the monster you think you know wasn't always equipped with her most potent phonic deity, a force of the earth herself, before being folded into the more structured Greek mythology. If you think about it, many of the older earth-based deities were often depicted with fierce, animalistic aspects, embodying the raw, untamed power of nature. Perhaps her serpentine hair was a symbolic echo of that primal connection, a representation of the earth's fertility and dangerous mystery, long before it became a mark of shame and terror. This idea gives her an even deeper, more resonant backstory, pulling her out of the realm of mere monster and into something far more ancient and complex. You're starting to see, perhaps, that her story isn't as straightforward as a simple bad guy gets what's coming to her narrative, not by a long shot. So this incredibly beautiful Medusa, Athens, it wasn't just a building. It was a vibrant, bustling hub of spiritual life, a sanctuary of immense power and sanctity. You step through colossal bronze doors, perhaps still warm from the morning sun, into a cool, shadowed interior. Windows, catches, dust motes, dancing in the silent beams, illuminating the intricate carvings and gleaming statues. These weren't just women who occasionally lit a candle and muttered a prayer. Oh no, they were dedicated, body and soul, to the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and crafts. Their vows were strict, their duties constant. You would rise before dawn, the chill of the marble floor seeping into your bare feet, to begin the intricate rituals of purification. There would be daily ablutions, meticulously observed fasts, and hours spent in quiet contemplation or engaged in the sacred duties of the temple. Think of it as a divine internship, but without the possibility of quitting and moving back in with your parents. One of the most paramount vows for an Athenian priestess was chastity. This wasn't just a suggestion. It was an absolute requirement, a non-negotiable term of service to the virgin goddess Athena. The purity of her priestesses was seen as a reflection of Athena's own unblemished nature. It was believed that their devotion and physical inviolability somehow maintained the goddess's favor. This mainstream historical fact about the strict codes of ancient Greek religious service is often overlooked when people hear Medusa's story. Yet it's absolutely critical to understanding the tragic turn her life would take. It's not just a quaint historical detail, it's the very foundation upon which her fate rests. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient Greek temples actually employed temple keys, massive, ornate keys that were symbolic of a priestess's authority and access to sacred spaces. Imagine Medusa, perhaps, with one of these heavy, intricately carved bronze keys, feeling its weight in her hand as she moved through the inner sanctums. It wasn't just a utilitarian object. It was a tangible representation of her sworn duty and privileged position. The clink of that key against the silence of the inner temple would have been a daily reminder of her sacred obligations. Historians still argue whether the concept of priestess chastity evolved primarily from a patriarchal need to control female sexuality, or if it genuinely arose from deeply held spiritual beliefs about purity and divine connection. Was it about maintaining the sanctity of the temple for the goddess, or was it about maintaining social order and gender roles in a society? It's a fascinating chicken or egg question, isn't it? Regardless, for Medusa, it was an undeniable reality, a sacred promise etched into every fiber of her being. You can almost feel the serene rhythm of her life. There, the early morning light filtering through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the silent air, the hushed whispers of predators, the repetitive, calming movements of tending to the altars. Her beauty, once a source of admiration in the outer world, was now a quiet, perhaps even forgotten, aspect of her identity, submerged beneath the sacred duties and the unwavering commitment to her goddess. This was her world, a cocoon of devotion and spiritual peace, seemingly inviolable. Yet, as you might suspect, peace, this profound, rarely lasts in these old myths. Something or someone is always lurking just beyond the hallowed grounds, ready to shatter the tranquility. And in Medusa's case, that someone was about to make a very grand and very unwelcome entrance. You're standing there, in the quiet sanctuary, perhaps watching Medusa go about her duties, when a ripple disturbs the serene atmosphere. Not a physical tremor, but an almost imperceptible shift in the divine energies that permeate the temple. This ripple, you soon realize, emanates from the vast, restless depths of the sea. For even in the heart of Athena's landlocked temple, the influence of the gods stretched far and wide, particularly when one of them set their sights on something or someone they desired. And in this instance, that someone was Medusa, and the desiring god was none other than Poseidon. Imagine Poseidon, the earthshaker, ruler of the oceans, brother to Zeus himself. He's a god of immense power, often depicted with a flowing beard, holding his mighty trident, riding in a chariot pulled by hippocampi, those magnificent half-horse, half-fish creatures. He commands the waves, stirs up storms that can swallow entire fleets, and can crack the very earth with a stomp of his foot. He's passionate, volatile, and possesses an insatiable appetite for dominion and, well, attention. When Poseidon wants something, he usually gets it. And he wanted Medusa. This wasn't a subtle flirtation from afar, mind you. This was the relentless, overwhelming focus of an immensely powerful deity. His desire wasn't born of mutual affection or gentle courtship. It was born of raw, unbridled lust and a god's sense of entitlement. He saw Medusa's beauty, perhaps heard whispers of her devotion, and decided she would be his, regardless of her vows or her dedication to his sister, goddess Athena. It's a classic case of divine privilege, isn't it? The kind of scenario where no isn't really in the vocabulary of a powerful Olympian. It's a mainstream historical fact that many Greek myths feature gods engaging in non-consensual encounters with mortals. This wasn't just a plot device. It reflected a societal understanding of power dynamics in the ancient world, where the will of the powerful, be they gods or kings, often superseded personal autonomy. These stories served as both entertainment and, perhaps, as a way to explain the unpredictable and often cruel nature of the world. For Medusa, this particular divine attention would prove to be her undoing, a far cry from the serene existence she had cultivated within the temple walls. Here's a quirky tidbit. While Poseidon is primarily known as the god of the sea, he was also associated with horses and earthquakes. Some myths even say he created the horse. So, imagine a god whose passions run as wild and untamed as a stampeding herd of horses, or as destructive as a seismic tremor. That volatile nature, that raw elemental power, perfectly encapsulates the force bearing down on Medusa. It wasn't just a god's gaze, it was the entire weight of the sea and earth's raw energy focused on one vulnerable priestess. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of these stories of divine coercion in Greek mythology served primarily as a cautionary tale for mortals about the unpredictable nature of the gods, or if they normalized and perpetuated a cultural acceptance of male dominance and the subjugation of women. It's a debate that forces you to look beyond the surface narrative and consider the deeper societal implications of these ancient tales. Whatever the intent, for Medusa, Poseidon's ill-fated desire was a dark shadow beginning to creep over her peaceful existence, a storm gathering on the horizon that threatened to engulf everything she held sacred. You can almost feel the impending dread, the subtle shift in the temple's atmosphere, from serene calm to an uncomfortable, almost suffocating tension. The sacred space, once her refuge, was about to become the site of her greatest tragedy. The gentle hum of the fan suddenly feels a bit more ominous, doesn't it? The air in the temple, once filled with the scent of sacred oils and the quiet hum of prayers, now feels heavy, charged with a dark, predatory energy. You're watching, frozen in a moment of history that feels both ancient and sickeningly familiar. Medusa, in her innocence and devotion, is completely unprepared for what's about to happen. She's simply a young woman, a priestess, going about her sacred duties, her world defined by the marble walls and the silent statutes of her goddess. She believes, implicitly, that she is safe here, but safety in a world ruled by capricious gods is a fragile illusion. Poseidon, the god who has been stalking her from afar, now makes his move. He enters the temple, not in a storm of waves and thunder, but with a silent, terrifying inevitability. He violates the most sacred of spaces, the inner sanctum of the very temple dedicated to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, and, not coincidentally, his fierce rival. You can almost hear the silent screams of the hallowed grounds themselves, the stones protesting this desecration. This act isn't just an assault on a mortal woman. It's a profound, deliberate insult to Athena, a power play designed to humiliate his rival and take what she holds sacred. The mainstream historical fact here is that this particular version of the myth, where Poseidon assaults Medusa within Athena's temple, is largely attributed to the Roman poet Ovid in his work. Ovid's account is one of the most widely read and influential tellings of the story, and it's the one that most firmly establishes the victimhood of Medusa and the cruelty of her subsequent punishment. Before Ovid, some earlier Greek sources were a bit fuzzier on the details, sometimes portraying Medusa as a monster from birth. But Ovid's version is the one that has truly shaped our understanding of her tragic backstory, emphasizing the violation and the injustice of her fate. And here's a quirky tidbit in Ovid's telling. The temple is described as having doors with gold leaf on them, and it's located in the highest part of the city. This detail serves to underscore the profound sacrilege of the act. Poseidon didn't just find a quiet corner. He went for the most prominent, most revered, most public symbol of Athena's power and domain. The setting itself is a character in this tragedy, its sanctity a stark contrast to the violence that unfolds within its walls. Historians still argue whether Ovid's specific choice to place the event in Athena's temple was a literary device to create a more compelling narrative, or if it reflected an existing, perhaps less documented, tradition. Was he just heightening the drama, or was he recording a story that had been told for centuries? Either way, the impact of his choice is undeniable. It makes the entire story not just about Medusa's fate, but about the deeply personal rivalry between two powerful gods, and how mortals were often just pawns in their celestial games. You feel the stillness that follows, a profound, heavy silence where there once was peace. The tranquility is gone, shattered. The temple is no longer a sanctuary. It's a crime scene, a place of broken vows and defiled faith. And as you wait, you know that this silence is just the prelude to the inevitable storm. For a violation this severe, in a place this holy, could not possibly go unpunished. The question isn't if someone will pay, but who, and as you'll soon see, the answer is as unjust as the act itself. The fan's gentle hum now sounds like a distant, angry whisper. You can almost feel the goddess's rage building, a slow, terrible pressure about to be unleashed. The tranquility of the temple, so recently shattered, is now replaced by an ominous stillness, a palpable tension that crackles in the air. You sense it, a cold dread creeping into your very bones, because you know what's coming. A goddess has been wronged, and not just any goddess, but Athena, daughter of Zeus, born from his head in full armor, embodying strategic warfare, wisdom, and justice. Her fury, when unleashed, is not a gentle rain. It's a storm of divine retribution. Imagine the scene through her eyes, if you dare. Her sacred space violated. Her priestess, sworn to chastity and devoted to her service, defiled. This was not merely an act of lust on Poseidon's part. It was a direct challenge, a deliberate insult to Athena's authority and purity, and Athena, never one to back down from a challenge, especially from a brother with whom she had a long-standing rivalry. Remember how they famously competed for patronage of Athens itself. Athena won by offering the olive tree, while Poseidon offered a saltwater spring. Just a little sibling rivalry, divine style. This isn't just about Medusa, it's about cosmic disrespect. So, Athena descends, not with a roar of thunder, perhaps, but with a silent, terrible majesty. Her presence alone would cause the marble floors to shimmer, the air to grow heavy with her righteous indignation. You can feel the sheer force of her anger, a cold, hard certainty that demands immediate and absolute recompense. And in her divine judgment, swift and unyielding, she turns her gaze not to the powerful god who committed the act, but to the vulnerable mortal who was its victim, Medusa. This is where the mainstream historical fact of ancient Greek justice systems comes into chilling play. In many ancient societies, including early Greece, the concept of justice often revolved around communal honor and the maintenance of social order, rather than individual culpability, especially when divine figures were involved. When a sacred space was defiled or a goddess's honor impugned, the focus was often on purifying the space and restoring divine favor, sometimes at the expense of the victim. It wasn't about who caused this. It was about how do we fix this perceived insult to the gods and maintain cosmic balance. And Medusa, sadly, was the easiest and most direct way to restore that balance in Athena's eyes. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some interpretations suggest that Athena's punishment of Medusa wasn't just about rage, but also about a grim, warped form of protection. By transforming Medusa, Athena might have been granting her a terrifying power, a way to defend herself against future unwanted advances, albeit at an horrific cost. It's a bit like giving someone a nuclear bomb for self-defense, then being surprised when it annihilates everything around them. A terrible, ironic gift, if you can even call it that. Historians still argue whether Athena's punishment of Medusa reflects a deeper misogyny within ancient Greek religious narratives, or if it's simply a reflection of an absolute, unyielding, divine justice system that prioritized cosmic order above all else. Was Athena truly cruel, or was she merely upholding a divine law that mortals could not comprehend? It forces you to consider the complexity of these ancient narratives and whether we can truly apply modern sensibilities of justice to them. Regardless of the why, the outcome is undeniably harsh. You see Medusa still reeling from the trauma, now facing the wrath of a goddess. Her tears, perhaps still fresh from the assault, are not met with comfort, but with a gaze of unyielding condemnation. This isn't merely a scolding, it's a profound, irreversible curse. The goddess's voice, though not necessarily a shout, resonates with the power of the heavens, sealing Medusa's fate. The silence that follows is not a peaceful one, but the heavy quiet before a truly catastrophic change. You know, deep down, that Medusa's life and her very form are about to be irrevocably twisted. The moment Athena's judgment is spoken, the world seems to hold its breath. You can almost feel a seismic shudder as the very fabric of reality begins to warp around Medusa. This isn't some quick flick magic trick. This is a slow, agonizing process of divine transformation, a curse settling into her bones, her muscles, her very soul. It's the worst kind of punishment, a profound twisting of her identity, and you're witnessing the first, horrifying stages of it. First, you see her skin, the smooth, flawless complexion that once made her a subject of myth and admiration now begins to change. It hardens, the soft human texture giving way to something rougher, more reptilian. It starts as a subtle coarsening, like goosebumps that refuse to go away, and then dark, scaly patches begin to form, spreading across her neck and shoulders. It's not a quick, painless shedding of skin. It's a living, breathing horror, an unwanted new layer being forced upon her. Her fingers, once delicate and graceful, thicken and lengthen, the nails morphing into sharp, curved talons. You watch as her body, the very vessel of her beauty, is being systematically dismantled and reassembled into something monstrous. The mainstream historical fact here is that the physical transformation of Medusa is a key element of the myth, and it serves a profound narrative purpose. In Greek mythology, being turned into a monster often wasn't just a random act of cruelty. It was a visible, permanent marker of a person's new status as an outcast, a sign of their separation from human society. Medusa's transformation isn't just about making her terrifying. It's about making her an other, a being no longer welcome in the world of mortals. This physical change is the outward manifestation of her internal exile, the visible representation of the injustice done to her. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient artistic depictions of Medusa show her with boar tusks and a protruding tongue, features that were commonly associated with monstrous figures in ancient Greek art, particularly those linked with the chthonic or underworld deities. These weren't just random details. They were part of a visual shorthand that instantly communicated monster to an ancient audience. The inclusion of these features in some of her earliest portrayals shows just how early the monstrous image of Medusa was solidified, even before her snake hair became her most defining feature. Historians still argue whether the transformation of Medusa into a gorgon was a symbolic act of stripping her of her femininity and humanity, or if it was a divine act of her into a powerful, albeit terrifying, being. Was Athena taking away her beauty and making her monstrous? Or was she transforming her into a new kind of formidable power, a kind of goddess of fear and petrification? This question gets to the heart of how we interpret Medusa's new identity, not just as a victim, but as a figure of raw, untamed power. As you watch, you see her human form receding, a fragile memory being overwritten by a new, grotesque reality. Her face contorts, her gentle features stretching and hardening. A hiss, not from an animal but from the back of her own throat, escapes her lips as she struggles to comprehend the horrifying changes happening to her. The pain, you realize, is not just physical. It's a deep, soul-shattering grief at the loss of her former self. The goddess's curse has only just begun to take hold, and the worst, the most iconic and infamous part of her transformation is yet to come. You can almost feel the weight of this impending horror, a knot tightening in your stomach as you anticipate the final, terrible detail. The sleepy cadence of the fan in the background feels a little bit less comforting now, doesn't it? You're still fixed on Medusa, witnessing her horrifying metamorphosis, her human form literally unraveling before your eyes. The scales are spreading, her fingers are twisting, but it's what's happening to her head that truly seizes your attention, a sight that will forever define her in the annals of myth. Her beautiful, flowing hair, the very crown of her former glory, begins to writhe. Imagine it, strand by strand. Her golden locks, perhaps once soft and silken, twist and contort. They thicken, darken, and then, impossibly, they begin to move. Independently, no longer tethered by scalp or gravity. You see the skin beneath where her hair once grew tighten, then split, as if giving birth to something alien and terrifying. And then, from those newly formed fissures, from the very roots of what was once a symbol of her allure, the first serpentine heads emerge. It's not a gentle emergence. It's a violent, agonizing birth. They squirm, they hiss, their tiny forked tongues flickering in the air, tasting the terror that now permeates the temple. More and more they come, until her entire scalp is a writhing mass of vipers, each one alive, each one distinct, a living, squirming crown of horror. The sound of their collective hiss fills the sacred space, an unholy symphony replacing the tranquil whispers of prayers. This isn't just a physical change, it's a profound violation of natural order, a grotesque mockery of life itself. The mainstream historical fact is that the image of Medusa with snakes for hair is her most enduring, an iconic characteristic. This specific detail transformed her from a beautiful woman into the terrifying monster we recognize today, instantly signaling her monstrous nature and distinguishing her from other mythical figures. It's the visual shorthand for Gorgon, and it's what makes her unique in the pantheon of Greek monsters. Without the snakes, she's just a woman with a cursed gaze. With them, she's Medusa. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient Greek accounts describe the Gorgons, Medusa, and her two immortal sisters, Steno and Euryale, as having bronze hands and golden wings in addition to their snake hair. While Medusa is most often depicted without wings in later art, the idea of her being able to fly, perhaps like a terrifying winged serpent, adds another layer to her monstrous capabilities. Imagine her swooping down, a flurry of golden wings and hissing snakes, before delivering her stony gaze. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? Historians still argue whether the snake hair was primarily a symbolic representation of the chthonic underworld powers she was now forced to embody, or if it was a more literal visual manifestation of the serpent as a creature of evil and temptation in ancient cultures? Was it meant to signify her connection to primal, dangerous forces of the earth, or simply to brand her as something utterly unnatural and demonic? This debate touches upon the very core of how ancient symbols were meant to be interpreted and how they resonate or are misinterpreted. In modern times, you can almost feel the cold scales against your own scalp, the phantom weight of those slithering bodies as they coil and uncoil. Medusa's scream, if she can even articulate one through the horror, is swallowed by the relentless sibilance of her new hair. Her eyes, once pools of gentle beauty, now reflect the writhing mass above them, a mirror to her own despair. Her transformation is complete. She is no longer Medusa, the beautiful priestess. She is the Gorgon, a creature of terror, her very existence a testament to divine cruelty and injustice. And with this final, grotesque detail, her most infamous weapon is unleashed. The transformation is complete, and a new kind of silence descends upon the temple, heavier and more profound than before. It's the silence of utter horror. You look at Medusa, or what remains of her, and feel a chill that has nothing to do with the cool marble. Her skin is scaly, her hands clawed, and her hair is a writhing, hissing nest of vipers. But it's her eyes, no longer soft pools of human emotion, that now hold the ultimate terror. They are no longer eyes that see, they are eyes that turn. With the completion of her metamorphosis, Athena's curse has fully manifested, endowing Medusa with the infamous, petrifying gaze. Imagine it, you're standing there, perhaps trying to process the grotesque transformation, when her eyes, now cold and reptilian, land on yours. There's no warning, no slow build-up. One moment, you're breathing, feeling, thinking. The next, a cold, hard sensation creeps from your toes, up your legs, and through your body. You feel yourself stiffening, the warmth draining, your muscles locking, your very blood turning to stone. You are aware, for a fleeting, terrifying moment, of your own agonizing transformation. Before you become a lifeless, unmoving statue, a permanent fixture in this cursed tableau. This petrifying gaze is the mainstream historical fact that defines Medusa's power and made her one of the most feared creatures in Greek mythology. It's not just a symbolic ability, it's her weapon, her defense, and the ultimate expression of the curse laid upon her. It's why heroes fear her, and why her name has become synonymous with a gaze that turns life to inanimate matter. This ability effectively made her untouchable by mortals, a living weapon against anyone who dared to look upon her. Here's a quirky tidbit. While her gaze turned flesh to stone, some myths imply that the stone wasn't just any rock, but particularly realistic, detailed statues. Imagine a gallery of her victims, perfectly preserved in their moment of terror or surprise. A macabre art collection scattered around her lair. It's a grisly thought, turning living beings into morbid sculptures, but it adds another layer to the sheer horror of her power. She wasn't just killing, she was immortalizing their demise in the most horrifying way possible. Historians still argue whether the petrifying gaze was a later addition to the Medusa myth, perhaps to make her a more formidable antagonist for heroes, or if it was an inherent aspect of her monstrous nature from the earliest tellings. Did the snakes come first, and the gaze was an afterthought, or were both parts of an original, terrifying package? This debate highlights how myths evolve over time, gaining new details and powers to suit changing narrative needs and cultural understandings of fear. Perseus, a young man who has just promised to do the impossible, is standing there, probably feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders and a cold dread in his stomach. He's been tasked with retrieving a Gorgon's head, a feat that has claimed the lives of countless warriors before him. A normal person would have, quite rightly, given up on the spot and started looking for a new kingdom to live in. But Perseus is no ordinary mortal. He's a demigod, and when a hero finds himself in an impossible bind, the gods tend to take notice. Fortunately for Perseus, his divine parentage isn't just for show. His father, Zeus, is a bit of a hands-off dad, but his siblings, Athena and Hermes, often play a more direct role. And in this case, it's Athena herself, the very goddess who cursed Medusa, who steps in to help. Maybe it's a sense of divine responsibility, a desire to finish the job she started, or perhaps a strategic move to show up her rival brother, Poseidon. Whatever the reason, she, along with Hermes, decides to give Perseus the tools he needs to succeed. This divine assistance is a mainstream historical fact in the Perseus myth. The gods rarely stay out of the affairs of mortals, especially when those mortals are their own children or are involved in a quest with cosmic implications. Athena provides Perseus with a highly polished bronze shield, so shiny that it works like a mirror. This is the crucial, game-changing tool, she explains to him, that he must not look directly at Medusa, but instead use the shield's reflection to see her and navigate the encounter. It's a classic example of divine wisdom. You can't use brute force against this monster. You must use cleverness. Hermes, the messenger god of speed and cleverness, also gets in on the action. He provides Perseus with two other essential items: a pair of winged sandals, so he can fly and move with supernatural speed, and a harp, a special curved sword or sickle. The sandals are a quirky tidbit. They weren't just for getting there faster. They were a symbol of Hermes himself, giving Perseus a piece of the god's own power. And the harp, that unique, curved blade, is a detail that shows the ancient Greeks thought carefully about what kind of weapon would be needed for such a specific task. This wasn't a standard monster. It needed a specialized weapon. Historians still argue whether the gifts from the gods were meant to signify that Perseus was merely a pawn in a larger divine game, or if they were a recognition of his inherent heroic qualities, a reward for his courage and piety. Was he a great hero because he was given these tools? Or were the tools given to him because he was already destined for greatness? This philosophical debate touches upon the nature of destiny versus free will, a theme that echoes throughout ancient Greek literature. So armed with these divine gifts, Perseus is no longer an outmatched mortal. He is a formidable warrior, equipped not with more strength, but with supernatural cleverness, speed, and the one tool that can protect him from Medusa's lethal gaze. The stage is now set for the final, violent confrontation. Our sleepy hero, who started out in a dusty palace, is now soaring through the skies, a divine arsenal at his disposal, heading straight for the lonely, windswept rock where Medusa resides. You can almost feel the wind rushing past him, hear the faint beat of his winged sandals as he closes in on his fated encounter. The final act of this tragic story is about to begin. Perseus, now soaring through the skies on his winged sandals, is fast approaching the desolate island, the grim sanctuary where Medusa has been condemned to live out her existence. He knows, thanks to Athena's direct guidance, that looking directly at her means instant, irreversible petrification. This isn't a game of chicken, it's a fight for his life, and the stakes couldn't be higher. He has the tools, but he still needs the presence of mind, the cold, calculating courage, to use them effectively under unimaginable pressure. His most crucial tool, the gleaming, highly polished bronze shield, becomes his eyes. Imagine it. He approaches the island, not scanning the horizon directly, but holding the shield aloft, its reflective surface acting as a live video feed, albeit a slightly distorted one, of the landscape below and before him. He sees the rocky shores, the dark caves, and eventually the horrifying figures scattered around not rocks, but the petrified remains of Medusa's previous victims, each one a stark warning of the power he faces. It's a macabre art gallery, a silent testament to her curse. This use of the reflective shield is the mainstream historical fact central to Perseus's defeat of Medusa. It's the ingenious workaround, the quintessential example of brains over brawn. Without this clever strategy, Perseus would have simply been another statue in Medusa's chilling collection. It emphasizes the Greek value of metis, or cunning intelligence, often valued as much as, if not more than, physical strength in their heroes. It's not about being stronger than the monster. It's about being smarter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some interpretations suggest the shield wasn't just a polished surface, but perhaps even had magical properties that enhanced its reflective clarity, or even showed a slightly delayed image, giving Perseus a crucial fraction of a second to react. Imagine the tension as he navigates by a reflected image, every movement precise, every glance calculated. It's like trying to play a high-stakes video game where your only view is through a highly reflective, slightly curved mirror. Talk about a challenge. Historians still argue whether the detail of the reflective shield was inspired by actual ancient mirrors, which were often made of polished bronze, or if it was a purely fantastical element designed to provide a plausible, albeit magical way for a mortal to overcome a petrifying gaze. Did the myth-makers draw from their understanding of real-world objects, or did they invent a magical solution entirely? The debate highlights the blend of the mundane and the miraculous that often defines ancient myths. Perseus lands, silently, guided by the shield. He moves through the desolate landscape, the hiss of Medusa's serpentine hair perhaps audible even before he sees her reflection. He must locate her, approach her, and strike, all while avoiding any direct eye contact. It's a delicate dance with death, a ballet of cunning and courage. You can feel the tension in the air, the cold sweat on his brow as he navigates this perilous environment. The stakes are immense, not just for his own life, but for the future of his mother. And as he draws closer, the reflected image in the shield grows clearer, bringing him face to face, indirectly, with the Gorgon. The stage is set for the final, decisive blow. Your fan, perhaps, makes a low hum that sounds a bit like the whispered prayers of a nervous hero. The moment of truth has arrived. Perseus, with his eyes locked on the polished surface of his bronze shield, has found Medusa. She is asleep, a rare moment of vulnerability for the Gorgon, her head a tangled mass of hissing, slumbering snakes. He stands over her, his reflection superimposed over hers in the gleaming metal, the harp held tight in his hand. The scene is a grotesque echo of the injustice she suffered in Athena's temple. A moment of profound vulnerability seized upon by an agent of the gods. This is the climactic moment, the final violent act that concludes Medusa's tragic narrative. Perseus, guided by the reflection, does not hesitate. With a single, decisive swing of the curved harp, he severs Medusa's head from her body. It is a swift, brutal, and tragic end for a figure who was once a beautiful, innocent priestess. The story, which began with a profound injustice, now culminates in a violent execution, an act of divine will carried out by a mortal hero. The act of beheading Medusa is the mainstream historical fact that serves as the climax of the Perseus myth. Her head, with its still petrifying gaze, becomes the ultimate trophy, a weapon in its own right that Perseus will use later on his journey. This moment is what solidifies Medusa's place in myth as the vanquished monster, the obstacle overcome by the hero despite the tragic circumstances of her creation. Her death is not just an ending, it's a transition, turning her from a monstrous creature into a potent artifact. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient sources suggest that Medusa was the only mortal among the three Gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale, being immortal. This detail adds a layer of pathos to her story, making her the vulnerable one, the only one who could be killed. It's a key reason why Perseus was even able to succeed. He wasn't just a hero slaying a monster. He was a hero sent to kill the one Gorgon who could actually be killed, making her the tragic, fated victim of the gods' rivalry. Historians still argue whether the violent death of Medusa at the hands of a male hero was intended as a symbolic narrative of patriarchy, conquering the perceived dangers of female power and sexuality, or if it was a simpler story of good, the hero, triumphing over evil, the monster. Was her death meant to be a cautionary tale for women who defied the social order? Or was it just a thrilling conclusion to a heroic adventure? This debate forces us to confront the deeper, often uncomfortable, cultural meanings embedded in these ancient tales. As Perseus clutches the severed head, blood pouring from the wound, the final, most surprising part of the story begins to unfold. The violence of the act, the mingling of her blood with the earth, gives rise to something entirely unexpected. But before we get to that, you can feel the profound finality of this moment. The story of Medusa as a living, breathing being is over. The beautiful priestess, the cursed Gorgon, the isolated monster, all of those identities have ceased to exist. All that remains is her severed head, a grim and powerful artifact, and the lingering sense of injustice that clings to her memory. The hum of your fan feels a little less sleepy, a little more like a tense whisper, as you await the surprising new life that will spring from her violent end. The moment of Medusa's demise is shocking, but what happens next is truly astounding, a testament to the strange and fertile nature of Greek mythology. As her blood spills onto the earth, something entirely new and miraculous emerges, springing forth from her severed neck. This isn't just a messy aftermath, it's a profound act of creation, a surprising twist that adds yet another layer to complex legacy From the crimson flow, two distinct beings burst into existence. The first is Pegasus, the magnificent winged horse. Imagine him, pure white, with powerful wings that beat the air, ready to carry him to the heavens. He's a creature of unparalleled beauty and grace, born from a moment of horror and death. The second is Chrysaor, a giant warrior, often depicted carrying a golden sword. His name literally means "he of the golden sword." These two remarkable figures, seemingly disparate in nature, share the same origin point, the lifeblood of the slain. Gorgon, this miraculous emergence of Pegasus and Chrysaor from Medusa's body, is a mainstream historical fact in the myth, often attributed to the influence of Poseidon, Medusa's violator, as he was also the god of horses. It's a curious narrative choice, isn't it? From an act of violence and a cursed being, something beautiful and powerful can arise. It gives a strange, almost bittersweet coda to Medusa's story, suggesting that even in her tragic end, there was a spark of creation, a legacy that transcended her monstrous form. It's like the universe has a weird, dark sense of humor, turning a nightmare into a winged dream. Here's a quirky tidbit in some versions of the myth. It's not just the blood from her neck that creates these beings, but specifically the blood that mingled with the foam of the sea, highlighting Poseidon's direct involvement in their creation. This makes Pegasus and Chrysaor not just Medusa's children in a metaphorical sense, but directly linked to the god who caused her suffering, adding another layer of complex, tragic irony to their birth. It's a divine paternity test that no one asked for, resulting in mythological superheroes. Historians still argue whether the birth of Pegasus and Chrysaor from Medusa's neck was a later addition to the myth, perhaps to connect her more explicitly to the powerful gods, or if it was part of an older, perhaps pre-Olympian, tradition where chthonic deities were associated with sudden, wondrous births from the earth. Was it a way to redeem her in some small way by making her the mother of a famous creature? Or was it simply a classic mythological plot device to create new, interesting characters for future stories? The debate explores how myths are not static but constantly evolving narratives, shaped by the cultural and theological needs of their tellers. So, as Perseus makes his escape with the severed head, leaving behind the gruesome scene, he also leaves behind the nascent forms of these two powerful beings. Pegasus, in particular, will go on to have his own adventures, carrying heroes like Bellerophon into battle against the Chimera. Medusa, in her death, became a catalyst for new life, albeit life born from horror and injustice. Her final act, unintended though it was, created legends. You can almost hear the powerful beat of Pegasus's wings as he ascends into the sky, a magnificent, unexpected phoenix from the ashes of a deeply tragic life. The hum of your fan, perhaps, sounds like the gentle flutter of those powerful, newly formed wings. So we've come full circle. Medusa, once a beautiful priestess, then a tragic monster, and finally a catalyst for new life, is gone. But her story is far from over. Her image, her name, and her petrifying gaze have echoed through the centuries, finding new meaning and new life in art, literature, and culture. She didn't just die. She became immortal in a different way, a powerful and complex symbol that we are still trying to unravel. Perseus, of course, went on to use her severed head to great effect, turning his enemies to stone, saving his mother, and eventually becoming king. Her head, even after her death, was a potent weapon. It's a mainstream historical fact that Athena herself, after Perseus's quest, took Medusa's head and affixed it to her shield, the Aegis. Imagine the irony. The very goddess who cursed Medusa to have a petrifying gaze now used that gaze as her own divine weapon, a symbol of her formidable power. This final act solidified Medusa's legacy, not just as a monster, but as a permanent, powerful force in the divine arsenal, her power forever bound to the goddess who condemned her. Here's a quirky tidbit. The image of Medusa's head, known as the Gorgonion, became a widespread apotropaic symbol in ancient Greece, meaning it was used to ward off evil. You'd find it on doorways, on shields, and on coins, meant to scare away malevolent forces. The very image that represented terror was used as a tool to instill fear in evil spirits. It's a bit of cosmic jujitsu, isn't it? The symbol of the ultimate curse became the ultimate protection. Historians still argue whether the enduring popularity of Medusa's myth and her continued presence in art and culture is a testament to the primal human fear of the monstrous feminine, or if it reflects a more nuanced, evolving understanding of her as a symbol of female rage, injustice, and resilience. Is she a simple villain or a tragic hero? The debate continues to shape how we interpret her story, turning her from a one-dimensional monster into a figure of deep symbolic complexity, a canvas upon which different cultures and generations can project their own fears and fascinations. You think about her now, not as the terrifying monster, but as a woman who lost everything, a victim of a divine power play. Her beauty turned to horror, her faith repaid with exile. Her name, once whispered in fear, is now spoken with a measure of sympathy and understanding. Her story is a haunting reminder that in the grand sweep of myth and history, things are rarely as simple as they seem, and the monster we see on the surface often hides a deeply tragic and human core. Her head, now a symbol of both terror and protection, and the birth of Pegasus, a symbol of hope and beauty, remain as her legacy. The beautiful priestess is gone, but her myth, like the statues she left behind, is set in stone, a permanent, complex, and enduring part of our collective imagination. And as you close your eyes and ease into sleep, you might find yourself thinking less of the monster with snakes for hair, and more of the gentle girl who once lived in a temple, her dreams and her fate all tied up in a cruel twist of divine rivalry.